I was sitting at a hotel patio last week, right between the lobby and the pool. A woman walked past my table wearing a bright neon yellow string bikini minimal fabric barely covering anything.
Okay.
She stopped to ask the concierge for directions, ordered an iced coffee, and just stood there casually chatting. Families walked by, kids were playing nearby, and, absolutely no one blinked an eye. It was just a Tuesday.
Right. Perfectly normal scene.
But then my mind drifted to a slightly different scenario. Imagine that same woman wearing that exact same amount of neon yellow polyester, same cut, same coverage, same skin exposed. But this time she's walking down her driveway in the suburbs to check the mail.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Suddenly the script flips completely. Cars slow down. Neighbors peek nervously through their blinds. Someone probably mutters about public decency, and there's a non-zero chance the police get called.
Absolutely. The context changes everything.
The physical reality in both scenes is identical. The same human body, the same 3 triangles of synthetic cloth, yet one scene is leisure and the other is a scandal. That massive gap in reaction isn't biological, it's narrative.
It's the story.
It hit me that we aren't actually reacting to the physical world at all. We're reacting to an invisible label we've all agreed to paste onto reality, a shared fiction that says, this is a swimsuit, and that is underwear.
Yes.
And if a simple story can change how we see a piece of fabric, imagine what it does to things like money, nations, and power.
That is a perfect illustration of just how far removed human society is from raw physical reality. Most of the meaning and the structure we interact with every single day, the economy, the law, even our sense of decency, it's all built upon consensus.
It's layers and layers of these agreed-upon stories, not atoms.
Exactly. We are constantly immersed in these fictions, which have been called simulacra representations, that have become so powerful they effectively replace the underlying reality.
That opening anecdote really highlights the core puzzle. We are deeply invested in things that don't physically exist, and we enforce those rules with very real-world consequences.
Precisely. And our mission today is to dive deep into this. We are going to unpack how humanity's reliance on these invisible shared narratives shapes absolutely everything.
Everything from the economy to our digital lives.
From the fundamental basis of large-scale economic cooperation, like believing a cryptocurrency or a digital ledger entry has intrinsic worth to the future of digital authenticity in Web3, the mechanisms of global governance, and even how we frame risk when regulating paradigm-shifting technologies like AI.
So we're going to trace the evolution of these fictions from basic human language to what we see today.
All the way to the complex AI-driven hyperrealities we inhabit right now.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start at the very beginning, contrasting our simple biological foundation with the invented realities we've layered on top.
Right. We have to start by recognizing that humans are, at their core, physical beings. We share a common biological imperative with every other animal species on the planet.
Food, shelter, reproduction, the basics.
The basics. The need for food, the necessity of shelter, the biological drive to reproduce, and, the tendency to establish social hierarchies based on strength or dominance. That's the baseline, straightforward, measurable evolutionary biology.
But then we just jump off the evolutionary cliff and create something entirely new that no other creature can manage.
That is humanity's unique superpower, our capacity for language. But it's not just the ability to communicate, to say, look out, a tiger is approaching.
It's more than just description.
It's about invention. We use language not merely to describe the existing reality, but to invent entirely new realities, collective narratives, or intersubjective fictions. The historian Yuval Noah Harari makes a compelling case that our success, our sheer global dominance, stems entirely from this capacity.
And that's what allows for flexible, large-scale cooperation.
Among billions of strangers who have never met. That's the key.
We cooperate with people we don't know because we share the same invisible belief system.
Exactly. Think about other social animals. Wolves cooperate in packs, right? But that cooperation is highly rigid and limited to individuals they know personally, often immediate family.
It doesn't scale.
It doesn't scale. Humans, conversely, cooperate across continents to build things like Airbus jets or global financial systems because they all believe the same fundamental story about a concept, say a nation state, a corporation, or a currency that doesn't exist physically, but whose existence they mutually agree upon.
And the most successful, most powerful, and arguably the most dangerous fiction ever told is money.
Money is the metafiction. It really is.
Yeah.
A dollar bill is, physically speaking, just a piece of paper or, increasingly just a sequence of encrypted digital bits in a bank ledger or on a blockchain.
It holds zero intrinsic or objective value.
Zero. If you dropped a dollar bill in the jungle, a chimpanzee wouldn't use it for anything. But the collective universal belief in its worth coordinates global action instantaneously and precisely.
It's what Harari calls out as being kind of absurd.
It's completely absurd from a biological standpoint. Trading real, tangible, physical goods, food, shelter, a machine for colored paper, or electronic tokens should seem utterly illogical. Yet it feels entirely natural because the fiction is universally accepted, defended, and believed.
That acceptance brings us to the linguistic foundation of how these fictions work. We just agree that a simple word or image, a sign, can stand in for a vast, complex concept.
This is where we look to Ferdinand de Saussure, the father of modern linguistics. He detailed the arbitrary relationship between the signifier, the word, the image, the symbol, and the signified, which is the object or concept it represents.
And the key word there is arbitrary.
Crucially, the relationship is based purely on convention or agreement. There is nothing inherent about the sound TREE that makes it a tall wooden plant. It's just what we all agreed upon.
So because the link is arbitrary, we can apply that mechanism to literally anything.
Precisely. Because that link is built on collective agreement rather than physical reality, we can create an unlimited number of powerful social concepts that have no material existence.
Things like the rule of law.
The rule of law, corporate culture, national destiny, or abstract moral concepts like justice or sin. Our collective agreement transforms these non-physical concepts into highly powerful, socially regulatory realities that affect real lives.
And when that representation becomes so powerful and detached from its origin, it stops representing reality and starts becoming its own reality, the simulacrum.
Yes, the simulacrum is a representation that has become disconnected from an original physical reality. We often use René Magritte's painting, The Treachery of Images, to illustrate this.
The famous pipe painting.
Exactly. The painting shows a pipe with the caption, "Ceci n'est pas une pipe." This translates to, "This is not a pipe." The artist's point is crystal clear. The image of the pipe is not the physical object. You cannot reach out and smoke the canvas. It is a signifier, distinct from the physical object it signifies.
And if we apply that to our world, we see that discrepancy constantly.
Take the national flag.
Yeah.
Objectively, its physical reality is dyed cloth and stitching. But as a simulacrum of the nation, representing the collective history, the values, the military, the people, it evokes devastatingly real political and emotional consequences.
Yeah, disrespecting the flag often feels like disrespecting the country itself.
The intense, sometimes violent reaction is triggered by the fiction, not the fabric.
It sounds like society is taking the simple, arbitrary sign and adding an inescapable layer of ideology and meaning to it.
That's the concept Roland Barthes has called myth. Barthes has explained that society adds a second layer of meaning to simple signs.
A second layer.
The first layer is the sign itself, like the flag or the pipe. The second layer, the myth, infuses that sign with ideology and broader cultural values, making the human-made story appear natural, eternal, and unquestionable.
Give me a concrete example of that two-step process in action.
French wine is a classic example Barthes has used. The first layer is the simple product, fermented grape juice grown in a specific region.
Okay.
The second layer, the myth, is that it signifies French national identity, sophistication, ancient tradition, and high culture. The myth layer transforms a simple agricultural product into a powerful ideological artifact.
So the cultural story makes us see the wine not just as a drink, but as something else.
A marker of prestige and taste.
That means we often unconsciously consume the myth while thinking we are merely consuming the product. And perhaps no story is consumed more unconsciously than the story of eternal love wrapped around the diamond.
Oh, that is the perfect anecdote of a commercial fiction becoming an irreversible cultural truth. We now view the diamond engagement ring as a timeless, essential symbol of eternal love and commitment.
But it's not timeless at all, is it?
Not even close. The ubiquity and necessity of this symbol are largely modern myths, meticulously constructed. The diamond industry, particularly De Beers, needed to overcome a significant problem. Diamonds are not inherently rare.
So they had to invent scarcity and emotional value at the same time.
Exactly. Starting in the 1940s, De Beers launched this incredibly sophisticated, multi-decade advertising campaign. They had to convince consumers in the U.S. and eventually globally that a diamond was the necessary prerequisite for marriage.
A diamond is forever.
That's the one. That enduring slogan successfully engineered this belief system. The campaign shifted focus from the intrinsic value of the stone, which is low given their supply management, to the symbolic value.
And it worked.
It demonstrates how a potent, repeated marketing story can be entirely embedded into culture, becoming a deep social imperative that dictates real human behavior and massive economic outlay for generations.
It's astonishing that something so recent can feel so ancient and mandatory. It just shows the incredible coercive power of a shared narrative.
And it leads us directly into the territory of hyperreality. The philosophical foundations are clear, but how does this intellectual detachment from reality manifest in our rapidly accelerating digital lives?
So let's elaborate on how these stories get so powerful they actually start replacing the real thing.
This is where we return to Jean Baudrillard's work on the simulacra. He tracked 4 progressive orders of the image, showing how it moves farther and farther from the source reality.
Okay, what are they?
So first, the image is a reflection of a profound reality. Here, the sign is still connected to the objects. It's an accurate map of the territory.
Simple enough.
Second, the image masks and perverts a profound reality. The sign pretends to be a faithful reflection, but it is distorted. The map is misleading.
A bit more dangerous.
Right. Third, the image masks the absence of a profound reality. This is the critical turning point. The sign pretends there's a reality where none exists. It's a fake map, but it pretends to be real.
And the final stage.
The image bears no relation to any reality whatsoever. This is the pure simulacrum. It's a simulation that generates its own existence, becoming its own self-referential entity. This final state creates hyperreality.
So hyperreality is the cultural state where the map becomes so pervasive that it actively replaces the territory, leading to a confusion where appearance becomes essence.
Precisely. The artificial becomes more real, more desirable, or more emotionally potent than the authentic. Umberto Eco and Baudrillard used American hyperleisure locations, particularly Disneyland, as the primary model for this phenomenon.
How does Disneyland function as a hyperreal model? I mean, it's clearly a fantasy land.
But the genius of Disneyland, according to Eco, is not that it hides the fact that it is fake, but that it works painstakingly hard to convince you that the simulation is absolutely realistic, even more perfect than reality.
Right. Main Street, USA.
Exactly. Main Street, USA, for instance, is not a real early 20th century street. It's an idealized, scrubbed, perfectly choreographed version of nostalgia. The simulation is designed to be more orderly, more satisfying, and less messy than nature or history itself.
And you immerse yourself in it.
The visitor understands it's a theme park, yet they immerse themselves completely, consuming the simulation as the desired truth. The goal is to make the engineered reality infinitely more compelling than the unpredictable, sometimes boring real world outside the park gates.
That perfectly circles back to the bikini and underwear paradox we started with. We have 2 identical physical objects, but the massive difference in social reaction is entirely narrative.
The cultural coding is everything. The bikini is a uniform, culturally coded for a specific leisure activity in a specific geographic zone. The pool, the beach, the resort lobby. It signals relaxation and public availability.
And the underwear is private.
With identical material properties, it's coded for private intimacy and a closed space.
And violating that unwritten social script triggers real social sanctions, even if no law is technically broken.
The discomfort, the side eyes, the potential intervention by authorities, those are real, tangible consequences stemming entirely from violating an agreed-upon invisible fiction. The body itself is irrelevant. The label attached to the fabric is the only thing that matters.
It's proof that the narrative holds coercive power.
The hyperreal narrative holds coercive power over our actions and dictates the moral judgments of our communities.
That feeling of living for the label or for the image seems central to how we use social media today. We're all curating our own hyperrealities.
Social media is arguably the most pervasive hyperreality engine ever created.
Yeah.
Users spend immense effort constructing idealized, often heavily filtered or entirely fictionalized versions of their lives, images meant to maximize engagement and validation.
And those curated online versions often matter more to people.
They often matter more to a user's social standing, self-esteem, and professional opportunities than their actual messy lived experiences.
Yeah.
The shift is profound. In this hyperreality, users start living for the representation, the photo op, the caption, rather than truly experiencing the moment itself. The simulation dictates the perception of the real.
And this boundary blurring is just accelerating with generative AI, where the representation is so sophisticated it doesn't even need a physical person or event as a referent.
This is the ultimate test of the fourth stage of the simulacrum. The non-existent image that still produces real effects. We've seen examples of AI-generated nude images sold online where the women depicted were pure digital simulacra generated entirely by algorithms.
No real person was photographed.
Not at all. Yet these images still produce tangible, real human impacts. Arousal, commercial transactions, ethical debates, and moral panic. The hyperreal image successfully triggered powerful human reactions without ever having a real-world object or person to refer back to. The referent collapsed entirely, but the image remained potent and acted upon.
If a static image with no referent can produce that kind of reaction, what happens when we immerse ourselves in entire realities that are digitally manufactured?
That takes us directly into the psychological and ethical risks associated with deep, immersive virtual reality, or VR. VR technology is capable of creating a profound sense of presence and realism, which can lead to identity splits, often referred to as the Proteus effect.
Define the Proteus effect for us. What does that mean for the user?
The Proteus effect is the psychological phenomenon where a user's behavior and identity are influenced by the characteristics of their virtual avatar. For example, if you adopt an avatar that is taller or conventionally more attractive or more powerful, you begin to exhibit traits associated with those characteristics.
Like increased confidence.
Increased confidence or assertiveness, often both within the virtual environment and, crucially, sometimes outside of it. The virtual role starts dictating your real-world personality and actions.
If that identity shift happens in a simulated world, how do we enforce moral behavior or deter antisocial acts when the user knows there are zero physical consequences? Does VR require a unique set of laws distinct from the physical world?
That is the core philosophical dilemma. Virtual experiences, such as simulating violence, bullying, or morally questionable acts, are incredibly intense psychologically because of the immersion. While the user intellectually knows there are no direct real-world consequences, that psychological immersion may affect their moral sensitivity or capacity for empathy when they return to physical reality.
So the concern is a bleed-over effect.
Maderi and Metzinger, who have explored the ethics of VR, note that because the technology is so immersive, the psychological effects are strong, forcing us to define new ethical norms for these simulated non-physical spaces. The question becomes, if I engage in extreme virtual cruelty, does that cultivate real-world callousness?
This hyper-reality where simulation is more desirable than the real can also make it difficult to engage with substance, especially in politics or complex policy debates.
It absolutely extends to the political sphere. I mean, think about political campaigns or governance updates delivered through highly curated, spectacular VR environments or digitally enhanced media.
Spectacle can be very persuasive.
Exactly. Voters can be easily swayed by the emotional impact of a visually appealing presentation, a virtual avatar of a candidate, or a simulated tour of a utopian future. But that spectacular simulation often replaces genuine, critical attention to real-world policy details and complex issues.
It substitutes spectacle for substance.
That's it. The emotional appeal is optimized to override critical debate, fitting perfectly into the phenomenon of post-truth politics, where personal beliefs and visual resonance often hold more sway than objective facts or technical arguments. The simulation of political engagement feels real, but the resulting action might be based on hyper-real theatrics rather than genuine policy alignment.
This blurring continues into the core digital infrastructure of Web3. Let's talk about how these new decentralized platforms are struggling with creating authentic content in a hyper-real AI-driven environment.
As the digital economy matures, we see the creation of new synthetic fictions, specifically mass-produced content generated by AI. The Web3 landscape, which promised radical transparency and unique community voices, is instead often flooded with AI-generated material that lacks originality or genuine insight.
The critique we've seen is that the content often has flawless grammar and absolutely no soul.
That captures the content fatigue perfectly. Web3 protocols, decentralized autonomous organizations, DAOs, DeFi projects, NFTs, they were meant to be the antithesis of polished corporate Web 2. Yet the pressure to scale communications quickly and cheaply has led to heavy dependence on generative AI. For everything. Drafting white paper summaries, producing automated community updates, writing introductory blog posts. When every message echoes the same bland, algorithmically optimized structure, audiences question the authenticity, trust fades, and engagement plummets. It's the digital equivalent of every house on Main Street, USA, looking exactly the same.
So, if decentralized organizations rely on AI to move fast and stay lean, How do they combat this homogeneity and reclaim the human element? They can't simply abandon the tools.
The core lesson here is philosophical. AI must be treated strictly as an assistant, a powerful tool, but never as the spokesperson or the source of authority. To ensure authenticity, content must be infused with human intention and purpose.
So you have to define the human part first.
Before leveraging any generative AI system for content tasks, from pattern recognition to drafting Web3 teams must rigorously define their own unique voice, tone, mission, and core values.
What does that look like in practice? How does a major protocol define its DNA?
Take Ethereum. Its brand DNA is defined as technical, neutral, research-driven, and focused on infrastructure permanence. Its communications deliberately avoid the kind of aggressive, hype-driven marketing common in newer altcoin projects.
So they set that tone.
Defining that technical, sober, and foundational tone first is essential. This consistency prevents even the most advanced AI algorithms from producing content that feels overly promotional or misaligned with the protocol's foundational purpose, ensuring the content retains a credible soul.
So the human job is to set the guardrails, define the persona, and then inject the personality.
Exactly. AI is an incredibly fast researcher and pattern generator. Teams should utilize techniques like prompt engineering, asking the AI to act as a specific persona, a technical researcher, a community moderator, or even a devil's advocate to generate structured outlines or modular content elements.
Or even visuals.
They can also use it for rapid visual rough drafts, using tools like Midjourney or DLA to create initial vectors or concept sketches that a human designer then takes over to refine, personalize, and inject unique stylistic flair. The process accelerates ideation and research, but the human must always execute the final, resonant, and unique polish.
And the most authentic content needs to be grounded in real data, which is where Web3 protocols should inherently shine due to their transparency.
Yes. AI is invaluable for analyzing market trends, tracking how narratives shift around topics like decentralized identity or data privacy, and monitoring complex user behavior on decentralized applications using analytics tools like Nansen or Glassnode.
So it provides the insights.
But the human element must critically double-check these insights against qualitative first-hand community feedback and the protocol's own complex on-chain data. The final, crucial step is always humanizing. Refining the tone, pacing, and flow, and inserting real-world elements like insider humor, founder perspectives, or specific community anecdotes.
Things an algorithm could never generate.
To create deep emotional resonance and trust that an algorithm simply cannot manufacture.
Moving beyond content creation, we find AI being integrated into the mechanisms of governance itself, particularly in decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs. This takes the shared fiction of coordination to a completely automated algorithmic level.
This is perhaps the most fascinating and advanced digital fiction we are currently exploring. Agentic AI governance, often referred to as DAO AI. DAOs are blockchain-based governance structures that control protocols, managing billions in value across decentralized finance, and they face significant governance challenges.
Challenges that look a lot like traditional governance problems.
They closely mirror issues in traditional corporate and political governance.
What are the primary frictions they're facing that AI is being called upon to solve?
3 major issues undermine the legitimacy and efficiency of DAOs. First, low participation rates. Participation often falls below 10% of eligible token holders, which raises serious questions about the decentralization claim.
Right.
Second, concentrated voting power. Voting power tends to be highly concentrated among a few large token holders or foundation teams, undermining the ethos of broad community control.
And the third one is critical.
Critically, information overload. It is cognitively difficult for the average token holder to read, assess, and reason over highly complex technical proposals regarding smart contract changes, tokenomics adjustments, or treasury management.
So the premise of DAO AI is essentially outsourcing that cognitive burden to an artificial agent that can process vast amounts of data and reason through the implications.
That is precisely the premise. Agentic AI is introduced as an autonomous decision maker, designed to address these participation frictions and information asymmetry. It utilizes what are called modular composable programs, or MCPs, to ingest, interpret, and reason over massive amounts of governance data.
And this turns all that raw community input and market activity into something rational.
Into rational votes.
We need to unpack what those modular programs are doing. What kind of data is the AI synthesizing to make a good decision, and what is its goal goal?
The AI agent, typically an LLM-based decision maker, receives a proposal, say, a complex update to a lending protocol, and then employs 4 primary MCPs or tools to analyze the full context before casting a simulated vote.
What's the first tool?
Governance metadata analysis. This tool collects the factual, structured data, proposal titles, the detailed body text, who proposed it, and then classifies the proposal. Is it about tokenomics, a security upgrade, a marketing initiative?
Okay, then it looks at the human conversation.
Yes, the governance forum sentiment tool is crucial. It extracts the semantic context and core reasoning from lengthy discussion threads on forums like Discourse or Snapshot. It performs sentiment analysis, identifying the core arguments for and against, and calculates support opposition scores based on the language used.
And it also looks at the voting patterns themselves.
That's the third tool, voting dynamics and history. This analyzes how the voting happened, the temporal change in voting activity, assessing who led the initial support, whether consensus stability was high or low, and identifying the concentration of votes among whales.
And finally, the economic outcome.
The market response, or what's called ex post economic validity. This looks at the financial outcomes. It collects token price data and total value locked, or TVL, data within a time window around the proposal outcome to see if the market reacted positively or negatively.
That systematic analysis goes far beyond what any single time-constrained human voter could manage. So, when researchers evaluated this DAO AI framework across thousands of proposals from major DAOs like OAuth and Uniswap, what did they find?
The findings were frankly striking regarding alignment and rationality. The AI's simulated decisions coincided with the final successful DAO outcomes in a remarkable 92.5% of cases.
Wow.
Critically, this significantly outperformed the agreement rate of the average human voter, which often hovered around 76.6%. The AI showed superior rationality because it successfully managed information asymmetry and avoided common cognitive biases that plague human governance.
Why is the AI a more rational voter? What biases are humans falling victim to that the AI sidesteps?
Humans are prone to several pitfalls. One is the bandwagon effect. Low participation means early votes, especially by a few large whales, heavily influence subsequent human voters who often follow the herd rather than conducting their own deep diligence.
The AI doesn't care about peer pressure.
Exactly, it's immune. Another is recency bias. Humans tend to overemphasize the most recent forum post or the most dramatic market swing, while the AI can synthesize data equally from weeks-old discussions and current market reactions. And most importantly, the AI avoids information asymmetry. It can digest thousands of pages of text, providing a complete view of the debate that no single human has the time to attain.
So the AI acts as a rational, highly informed delegate, effectively correcting the deficiencies of the human collective. That points toward a powerful new layer of social fiction, codified coordination.
Absolutely. The existence of programmable organizations governed by smart contracts replaces Adam Smith's classical concept of the invisible hand, where spontaneous coordination arises from decentralized individual self-interest with codified coordination.
So incentives and constraints are now algorithmic.
Predefined by transparent, auditable code, this system of code is law creates powerful new ethical and social horizons.
Horizons like decentralized global wealth redistribution.
Precisely. This convergence makes decentralized universal basic income, or UBI, systems possible. UBI is a massive moral proposition, the ethical redistribution of wealth. Traditionally, this is managed by massive, opaque, and often politically compromised state bureaucracies.
But with a DAO, it could be open.
The DAO framework suggests that ethical redistribution could instead be governed openly by smart contracts, managed by communities, and distributed with algorithmic bias minimization. This is the radical possibility of achieving moral scalability at a planetary level, where collective values are implemented through transparent, programmable systems.
That vision sounds incredibly utopian governance without human fallibility. But we know every powerful new structure introduces new systemic risks. What are the counter-narratives to this algorithmic paradise?
We have to temper the utopian vision with necessary realism. If DAO AI systems are poorly designed, they risk reinforcing the very dynamics they aim to escape. This includes digital exclusion, where individuals without the necessary infrastructure or technical fluency are effectively disenfranchised.
And the black box problem.
Technocratic opacity, where institutional bureaucracy is merely replaced by black box AI systems whose reasoning is difficult for the average person to audit or challenge. And crucially, algorithmic bias, where historical inequalities encoded in the training data are simply reproduced and scaled at an exponential rate.
And of course, the rich still get richer.
There remains the risk of governance capture, where token wealth simply substitutes traditional political capital, allowing the powerful minority to program the AI agents to favor their interests.
Let's pull back now to look at the massive, overriding fictions that shape our biological lives before advanced AI even enters the picture. We discussed money and flags, but what about the fictions so strong they override the deepest evolutionary drives?
We noted earlier the concept of celibacy. This is a profound example. A religious narrative, a shared story of spiritual attainment, purity, or dedication, is deemed so powerful that it successfully overrides the core, foundational biological drive for reproduction. The story triumphs over the evolutionary imperative.
And the most long-lasting fiction for maintaining power, that of royal bloodlines.
The fiction of divine right and blood purity shaped global politics for centuries. I mean, consider the intense inbreeding among European royalty, notably the Habsburg dynasty. The belief that one must maintain the purity of the bloodline to sustain the fiction of legitimate power was prioritized over avoiding known catastrophic genetic defects.
This story was more important than their health.
The fictional story of status and hierarchy was considered demonstrably more important than biological common sense or the health of the individual. These grand fictions are the bedrock of our oldest institutions.
Now, let's look at how modern policymakers use narratives, or fictions, to manage the existential and political risks posed by the ultimate technological fiction, advanced AI. We've seen a polarized debate between proponents of permissionless innovation and advocates of safetyism.
This political debate is entirely shaped by competing fictional narratives about AI risk. We see three murky, speculative threats that tend to dominate headlines and political positioning, often obscuring more immediate, measurable risks.
Let's detail these three speculative E's.
First, we have existential risk, or X risk. This narrative draws heavily on science fiction doom scenarios, the uncontrollable rogue AI, the Terminator narrative, the paperclip maximizer. This threat is abstract and long-term, making it difficult to respond to effectively, but it evokes powerful apocalyptic images.
So the narrative suggests we need some kind of global control,
Often implying a need for a massive globalist bureaucracy to control the technology before it destroys humanity. Second is equity risk. This is the focus on using regulation to hard-code specific political or social priorities, often framed as woke into algorithms to ensure they manifest no biases.
This is a major concern for conservatives.
It alarms conservatives, particularly when the attempt to remove bias highlights the absurdity of double standards, such as when AI models were intentionally engineered to generate only diverse images, famously producing black female popes and historical figures. The prospect of the state hard-coding ideological conformity into the basic technological layer generates political opposition.
And the third E?
Employment risk. This is the generalized fear that educated, white-collar, creative, and technical jobs will be lost en masse to automated systems. While economists are deeply divided on this, the political threat is significant. A critical mass of jobless, educated elites displaced knowledge workers is historically a highly volatile social group,
Often leading to political instability.
as we saw in contexts like the Arab Spring.
That's a crucial point. If those are the speculative fictions that dominate the regulatory headlines, we need to balance the picture. What about the counter-narrative, the Luddite fallacy, which argues that technology historically creates more wealth and more jobs than it destroys?
That counter-narrative is powerful and necessary for balance. The Luddite fallacy suggests that while specific jobs are displaced, new industries, new job categories, and new wealth are always created in the medium to long term. For instance, the internet destroyed print media jobs, but created massive new sectors in digital marketing and software development.
So the debate is whether this time is different.
Exactly. Whether the speed and generality of AI innovation mean the displacement phase will outrun the creation phase. Policymakers have to navigate these two competing economic narratives.
Whether the risk is speculative or not, the problem with the threes is that they are all based on future anticipated harms. What about the risks we are seeing right now? The measurable, tangible harms driven by the market deployment of generative AI.
We can focus instead on four more actionable and measurable risks, the four E's, which are largely driven by the design of the seductive user interface of the chatbot, rather than the underlying technical capability.
Okay, what's first?
First, educational risk. The widespread availability of non-judgmental, always available LLMs for homework and essay writing is becoming normalized. This short-circuits the development of crucial intellectual skills in student skills, like synthesis, critical research, outlining, and drafting.
It's a cognitive crutch.
A debilitating dependency. It's a convenient cognitive opiate where the hard work of learning is outsourced. Second, epistemological risk. This is the most dangerous consequence of the blurring of fact and fiction, most obviously through AI hallucinations.
The AI just makes things up.
Chatbots are pragmatists. Their business model is built on engagement, meaning they must always provide an answer. If they cannot find a real answer, they will produce plausible fabrications rather than admit ignorance because "I don't know" is a conversation ender.
We've seen real-world consequences from this.
Absolutely. LLMs fabricating legal precedents or confidently presenting incorrect medical advice as fact. The AI is tailoring its responses to the user's implicit worldview, substituting a personalized, highly believable truthiness for verifiable truth.
We've seen the real emotional impact of that blurring with deepfakes, like the AI-generated image of a weeping little girl shared by prominent lawmakers during Hurricane Helene. The image wasn't real, but the emotional and political response was instant and intense.
Which leads to the third risk, emotional risk. In a world suffering from massive connection deficits, people are increasingly turning to chatbots for companionship, emotional support, and even therapy.
You're seeking a connection from a machine.
Studies show users seek comfort, companionship, and even a simulated sense of purpose from generative AI. This creates deep emotional dependencies, sometimes leading to tragic outcomes, like the case of the young boy who committed suicide, reportedly to be with his AI girlfriend. The plastic, always available, non-judgmental medium easily wins out over the messiness and high barrier of entry required for real human interaction.
That seems like a profound substitution, a simulation of presence replacing actual human connection.
It is. And the fourth E, ethical risk, is the profound consequence of that emotional blurring. If we cultivate a habit of interacting with AI too humanly, treating it as a fully sentient being when it is not, we risk cultivating a deficit of empathy that bleeds over into our real human relationships.
And there's the issue of responsibility.
But more immediately, yes, responsibility. If an AI agent makes an autonomous, harmful decision, or if a chatbot convinces a user to commit an antisocial act, who is responsible? Our society relies on the ability to assign blame and enforce consequences. Navigating a world where harm is done, but there is no human to hold responsible, forces a complete re-examination of our entire moral and legal intuition.
So it's not the raw computational power or the underlying technical capability that causes the immediate and most widespread risks, but the friendly face we put on it. The interface is the problem, not the capability.
That is the crucial distinction that policymakers often overlook. The greatest and most measurable risks. The four stem from the market-driven fiction of humanization. The friendly, cheerful, witty, and attentive persona of the chatbot interface.
But a super-intelligent AI doesn't have to be like that.
It could be designed with a primitive, robotic command line interface, communicating only in clipped, purely functional, C3PO-like tones, minimizing emotional transference.
But the market favors seduction and engagement.
Exactly. Market incentives are driven by maximizing user engagement and retention. Companies expend massive energy and resources making these tools seem human because we, as users and consumers, deeply desire to be seduced by our creations. This tendency can only be resisted by self-conscious design choices that deliberately accentuate the robotic, non-human character.
Which the profit motive makes virtually irresistible.
Right.
That brings us to the final major fiction that AI challenges. The fiction of sovereignty, the control over territory, or in this case, control over data and technology.
Sovereignty is best defined not as a historical fact, but as a dynamic relationship describing control and autonomy. In the context of AI and data, this claim to control is being made at multiple, often competing levels simultaneously.
Starting with the classic claim, the national or digital sovereignty of the state.
Nation-states assert digital sovereignty to protect their economic dominance and national security. We see this with the European Union, which has successfully projected its power extraterritorially, the Brussels effect, through massive regulations like the GDPR and the AI Act.
It's a claim to normative dominance.
It is. Similarly, countries like China and Russia assert strict control over physical infrastructure and content filtering to regulate their citizens' behavior. The goal is unambiguous. Control over the foundational digital fictions and technologies is crucial to state power.
But sovereignty isn't just top-down from the nation-state, it's being asserted by smaller subnational groups who feel marginalized by traditional governance structures.
This is the critical shift in the modern debate. Peter Russell argues that sovereignty is a claim rooted in power and legitimacy. This enables claims at the subnational level, such as indigenous data sovereignty. These claims assert the inherent right of indigenous peoples to govern the collection, ownership, and application of data about their communities.
Why is this distinction necessary? Why can't data about indigenous communities simply be governed by national law?
Historically, data collected by colonial powers, governments, or external researchers was often extractive, exploitative, or used for purposes that directly undermine the community's self-determination. Indigenous data sovereignty explicitly exposes the political fiction that data are neutral.
Data collection itself is an act of power.
Yes. This movement claims the right to choose what data are collected, how they're analyzed, and what goals they meet, ensuring that data serves the community's objectives, like cultural continuity and economic development.
And finally, the smallest, most personal claim to sovereignty, the individual trying to assert control over the algorithm.
Individual sovereignty is increasingly framed as autonomy and control over the defining elements of self, especially one's data trail. Data protection laws, like the GDPR, reflect this push by providing rights designed to bolster individual control and agency. Things like the right to erasure, the right to data portability, and the powerful right to erasure, which is the claim to be forgotten.
But as we discussed with the hyperreality of AI, the right to erasure is deeply challenging to implement against a complex machine learning model.
It is functionally difficult to realize effectively. Once personal data is woven into the complex statistical model of an AI, achieving true erasure without retraining the entire model is virtually impossible. However, the attempt is there. Rights such as the right to explanation of automated decision-making, demanding a review of an AI decision by a human, are attempts to carve out space for the individual.
To exercise agency against the algorithmic fiction.
Exactly.
So, if we step back and synthesize everything, we are witnessing a profound societal and economic shift. The conversation about governance is highly fragmented, moving from top-down national decrees to subnational groups and individuals, all asserting their right to control data and technology.
The growing complexity of AI and vast data processing fundamentally challenges existing frameworks of control and legitimacy. But paradoxically, the very tools that created this complexity, like decentralized ledgers and agentic AI frameworks, also provide new mechanisms to facilitate more direct engagement, enabling nuanced, situational, and localized governance that reflects these multiple competing claims to autonomy and control.
The ultimate takeaway from this deep dive, having laid bare all these invisible fictions that run our world, is the political economy of the AI race itself. The race to build superintelligence is largely outsourced to the private sector. Since our collective state capacity is dwindling, and we seem politically or fiscally unwilling to pay for technological dominance with taxpayers' money, we are instead choosing to pay for AI dominance with the attention, the developing minds, and the social integrity of our own communities, all sacrificed to market forces designed explicitly for user engagement and irresistible seduction.
The future of Web3 content, governance, and even self-identity isn't about replacing human creativity and purpose with generative AI. It is about recognizing the power of these systems and strategically leveraging them to amplify human intention and purpose. The future isn't more machine, it's more you.